Ilia Topuria is absolutely devastated by the news of what happened with Conor McGregor, right? This is a guy that he looked up to. And even though we've sort of seen some back and forth between the two of them in the sense that, like, oh, maybe he wanted to fight Conor, you know, maybe he and Conor were having beef because of the fact that, like, Ilia's actually starting to outshine him and actually looking like someone who's going to rule the featherweight division for years. At the end of the day, and I said this in an earlier video, Ilia Topuria, growing up, looked up to Conor McGregor. And so seeing him kind of go off the path, you can see, like, this guy that he held in such high regard is really, immensely disappointing.
Sé que no es lo que era. Es un McGregor que
You know, he's representing
representa más
alcohol
el alcohol y
now.
las drogas que el deporte. Me he inspirado en
It's
Conor.
inspiration when I was young, myself and a lot of other people wanted to follow him because he was the example of faith and everything is possible.
De la fe, de que
Hard work,
todo se puede
consistency, and
conseguir,
effort,
de trabajo, de constancia, del
And he
esfuerzo.
lost all that because
Y
he
él sí lo ha
was
perdido.
betrayed.
Porque ha traicionado los valores que me han llevado hasta ahí. Está claro, ¿no? De lo que estamos
Okay,
hablando.
then
¿no?
nowadays
Que
doesn't represent
un tipo que
those values
hoy en
he
día no
used to represent
representa
years
los
ago.
valores que representaba
Lost an idol.
hace años. Se nos ha ido un ídolo.
You know, McGregor's not what he was. So, like, just imagine how many fighters are kind of getting into this space, right? Like, Ilia Topuria, you can see, you know, it's just like a look of disappointment in his eye, right? Maybe devastation is kind of the wrong word. By the way, if you wouldn't mind, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps with the algorithm, helps grow the channel. But, like, you know, like I said in the previous, in another video, like, never meet your heroes, right? Now he's basically... You know, who knows, right? But it looks like Conor McGregor was somebody who he idolized, somebody who he kind of built a brand off of, someone who he kind of aspired to be like, right? Someone who, you know, from the looks of it, isn't particularly special or athletic or any of those type of things, but still became the most famous MMA star in the world, right? And now this comes out, the allegations come out, everything that's coming out, and the people that looked up to him, and sort of, he was the guy that motivated them, in a sense, to have a career in MMA and fighting and mixed martial arts, and now that's all gone, right? And, you know, the hero that you had kind of growing up and thinking about who you idolized, and even, you know, if you look at some of his tattoos and whatever, like, this was the guy he wanted to be like, right? And I know a lot of people were giving him shit for, like, pulling Conor McGregor-esque antics, right? But, like, to me, and I said this in one of my previous videos, like, this was hero worship more than anything else. You know what I mean? So, you know, we look at, and this is just the beginning, right? Like, you know, Ilia Topuria is seeing what Conor's become, and he doesn't represent the guy that he at one point looked up to, right? The drugs, the alcohol, kind of the frivolousness, the heedlessness, you know, the lack of hard work, the lack of dedication to anything really these days, you know. He's got more money than he knows what to do with, but at the end of the day, right, if you live your life every single day without any kind of purpose, I said this in the previous video, it's like, now you're heedless, right? Now you have no direction. And, you know, all the alcohol and drugs and whatever, like, you know, we see this so much within, you know, people who are kind of like born into wealth and all these other kind of things, but they have no real purpose because they've had everything kind of handed to them on a silver platter, right? And it's like they get into addiction and they get into drugs and they get into, you know, all the coke and all these type of things, and then, you know, they go to rehab 20 times and just all of this stuff. And so, you know, I think Ilia, from two perspectives, right? Number one, he's kind of like this guy who he really admired, who was, you know, maybe in a sense like a hero and an inspiration and all these other kind of things. Like, you see him kind of falling off the deep end. And that's one aspect of it. But it's also potentially like a cautionary tale as well for him, and maybe like Sugar Sean and Ian Gary and some of these other guys who really, like, you know, looked up to Conor, right? It's like, okay, you know, maybe I don't take that big money fight, right? I mean, and the thing is, right, like, who wouldn't have taken that fight with Floyd Mayweather, like life-changing money, one night, and your life is considerably better, right? But like I said in the last video, right? It's like, okay, but now Conor's always gonna be asking himself, like, could I have been the best, right? Was this fight, did this cost me my legacy? Did this fight cost me what could have been, right? Like, the competitor in him is always going to have that doubt, those regrets, those questions. Yeah, sure, like 10 years ago you became double champ. But it's like, the sport moves on. A lot of people are going to think like, okay, well, what have you done for me lately? You know what I mean? So it's just interesting to look at what the impact of the whole situation with Conor is having, just like on fans, on the sport in general, and for the people that once looked up to him, that once saw him as someone worth aspiring to be, right? I know for a fact that Sugar Sean at one point was really like, and I think he still is, like, he idolized Conor. I think Ilia Topuria, very clearly, like, you can look at his tattoos and some of the antics he got into, like, he saw Conor doing all those things. It's like, hey, it worked, I want to be like this guy, right? But Ilia Topuria has done everything he said he was going to do, And same kind of thing with Ian Gary a little bit. Like, he's tried to pull some Conor-esque antics. Even Paddy Pimblett, right? They saw the blueprint. They saw the guy, right? And now they're just. Am I repeating myself? I feel like I'm repeating the same point over and over again. But yeah, I get where they're coming from, right? Like, when there's somebody you idolized, right, and there's somebody that you kind of looked up to in any respect, and you find out, like, they're not as good as you thought they were, right? Like, their character's taken a hit, or they've gone down a dark path, right? But this could potentially be, it's one of these things, right? Like, on the one hand, there's this crime that he's committed, right? Which, most of us aren't judges and lawyers and things like that, so it's kind of like, maybe leave it to the experts. I don't know whether he did or didn't do it. Who knows, right? Court says it's the case right now. He's going to appeal it. Maybe the court overturns it. I don't know, right? We're not lawyers. But at the end of the day, what I think is really important here is, like, maybe he turns it around, right? He says he's getting back in the gym. It'll never take away from the heinous thing he did. At the very least, like, he risked destroying his family, right? And there's been what I'm seeing now is there's been, like, more than one allegation of this, and it's like, yeah, lots of famous guys go through this type of fake allegations, right? But at a certain point, right, not everybody's lying, right? Not everybody not everybody's lying, right? So, but people love a comeback story. The problem is, like, I just don't see how Conor comes back to fighting, and does it in a way that's competitive. Like, people love it when people turn things around and, get on point, get back on track, and right the ship and all these other kind of things. And, like, these guys who are seeing Conor, whether it's Sugar Sean or Ilia or whatever, they're like, man, like, this is the fall of a hero, right? But if the hero picks himself and dusts himself off and becomes the best version of himself from that, people love a comeback story. But it's one of these things, like, can he even come back? Because, with other things, with other people, with other jobs, with other careers, with other professions, with businesses, it's like there's not an expiration date. But as a professional athlete, you are pretty much done by 40 in almost every sport except for maybe golf. So it's like, how does he come back? If there is a potential for comeback, how does it happen, right? And, for me, I just don't see it happening. So it's just interesting. Like, it's interesting to see how, so many fighters, whether you're talking Ilia Topuria or Sugar Sean or, a lot of the guys who clearly, like, got their motivation and got their inspiration from Conor are just watching kind of a public downfall from him, and how they're, just reacting to it, right? Like, you can just see just the disappointment in Ilia's face and his body language. Like, I was inspired, but now he represents drugs. You know, he represents alcohol. All right. I'm beating a dead horse here. You get my point, right? It's interesting, and it sucks to see. Anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that this is impacting some of the fighters that look up to Conor in any way, like his kind of very public downfall? Yeah. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.